As I said, everyone, Ludo is an ex-Microsoft and founder and CEO of Nucamp Coding Bootcamp. He's going to share his journey of creating Nucamp from the ground up. So, Ludo, if you want, I'm going to spotlight in video, and you now have the floor.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for having me. It's a real pleasure to join you. Plenty of people in here. It's kind of weird. That's my first virtual hackathon, I will say. But it's always great to see people. I love when people actually switch on their cameras. I tell that to the graduates when we do a graduation party. So if you have a camera, switch it on. We can actually appreciate seeing and kind of feeling more more together. All right, perfect. So being a Microsoft guy, I have to have a PowerPoint presentation. I hope you will forgive me for doing that. But that's the way people roll at Microsoft. You don't do a talk without a PowerPoint presentation. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. And you can all hear me okay, right?
Sounding great.
Of course. All right, great. Well, let's get going, and hopefully we can make it interactive. So ask me any questions, like switch off your mic. Do I have your chat? Yes, I have the chat window open here. Okay, so I'll look at all of that. And I have the presentation here, all the faces here in front of me, my camera here. So let's go. Yeah, so how you are going to turn your hackathon into a groundbreaking company. And of course, when I say groundbreaking, I'm thinking of Nucamp, but it could be your next company, I'm thinking. And let me start with, and thank you for introducing myself, but let me give you a little bit more background maybe. So I really started by graduating from a computer science and economics degree back in France. So I do have computer science, in my background, and I did start as a developer right after that. I joined Microsoft pretty much like 3 years into my professional career, and I joined right before the first internet crash, which was quite interesting. I won't tell you what year it was. You'll guess my age. I'm not that old, but a little bit. And so I spent like 18 years total at Microsoft, joined as a consultant doing development, and then for the next 15 years kind of moved away from development. I went more into the business side of things. So I worked with Microsoft partners. I was still at the time kind of doing things that were related to learning, and at the time we were certifying architects on .NET. And then I moved even closer to learning, and I was actually in charge of the Microsoft certifications before leaving. And I also spent a good amount of time at Microsoft building online courses. And that's very much my background. I kind of blended, learning and technology and my background in as being a developer myself. That led me very naturally towards Nucamp. And let me actually give you kind of the first guideline, or the first recommendation I have for you is the best idea for your hackathon is probably the one that feels the closest to you. You really want to pick something where you have expertise or passion. I have a good friend of mine who's probably like 30 years younger than me, who's passionate about very expensive watches, right? He's young, so he's going to have to make some money, but he also wants to be an entrepreneur. And so guess what? He should think about something in the, expensive watches space, because he knows a lot about that. And I started Nucamp knowing a lot about development, knowing a lot about learning, knowing a lot about online learning, certifications. And that really naturally brought me to, hey, thinking about a new way to do coding bootcamp. So actually, let me see if I can make this talk interesting and engaging, and if I can hear back from you. Can anyone actually want to switch on their mic and tell me what they are very passionate about and actually using that passion as the premise for their hackathon project? Who has an example to share with everyone? Oh, come on, don't be shy.
Ludo, may I ask a clarifying question, please?
Yeah.
I'm still pretty new here. Hi, I'm AJ. I use he, him pronouns. When you ask about put passion into a hackathon project, are you talking about a specific hackathon project or any?
Any. The one that you're working on right now.
Okay, cool. So I identify as a Gothic programmer. Try to marry science and humanities with creative coding. So I am doing NLP projects that analyze Gothic literature.
That's awesome. And what I really like about your project is it's very actually narrow and it's a niche. And oftentimes, to be successful, you want to address something that hasn't been addressed specifically in the marketplace. And so finding your niche is going to be key. And it can be very narrow. It doesn't matter. I'm sure if you do some research, you'll find that there's a huge audience for what you're trying to build right here. So finding the right idea is oftentimes something that you are very deeply connected to, where you are the expert. And I will add to that, because again, as I was discussing with my friend, he was like, hey, I want to do something fun. And I was challenging him to say, okay, fun is good. But if you really want to push yourself and make it meaningful, you have to think about and start to think about at the very beginning, how are you going to make money? For Nucamp, it was in a way easy because we were addressing an industry that was already there. Like I knew people were willing to pay to join a coding bootcamp, right? It may not be that obvious for everyone, right? And any idea, like you may not know yet if people will be willing to pay for what you want to build. And so you actually have to start to think about that, right? If you really want to build a groundbreaking company, you can't just start your idea thinking it's going to be fun or just fun, or it's going to be beautiful and it's going to be a great app. You really have to think critically about how am I going to make money? And some models are easier than others. Like if you're thinking you're going to create a social experiment and advertising is going to be your main source of revenue, you should know these are the business models that are probably the hardest to crack, right? If you're addressing an industry where you already know people are willing to pay for a product that's going to be very similar to yours, well, you're in a better shape because some of those hypotheses have been validated for you. And then, of course, we were talking with AJ, how are you going to differentiate yourself? Right? If you're planning to enter an industry where you have already major players, what's going to be the difference? And I really like what you're provided as an example. Being narrow often and very, very specific often is good. Like one could argue, you know, AJ's idea, well, Facebook could do it. Well, but no, because Facebook has never thought about how to actually address the Gothic audience who's looking for, and I'm not going to do it justice because you know more better than I, but you're going to find that the more specific you are and the more narrow you are, you're going to identify use cases, scenarios that are not implemented by any other of the competition, right? So Facebook does so many things so well, but for that very narrow use case, actually doesn't do it so well. So that's the very first step I would say. Before you actually start anything, really think critically about your idea. And oftentimes it's going to be something that's very hot, that's very deep and connected to your heart. I made the mistake myself to not trust enough my ideas and what I really liked. And one mistake I've made for years before I started Nucamp was that idea is not good enough. Like I was really looking for, you know, the Albert Einstein type of ideas, like it will be revolutionary. It doesn't have to be revolutionary. It just has to address a specific need in the industry or in the market, right? And then after that, it's going to be your execution. You guys have any question on that first step, first slide? Nope. All right, let's move on. Okay. So you have a great idea. It sounds like a silly question, but it's not. What is going to be your product? And I will actually ask you like a few questions here. What is Twitter's product? Anyone wants to answer that? What is Twitter's product?
I think Twitter's product is like lifestyles. I think it's selling people's lifestyles in a way.
Okay. Anyone wants to take a stab at that? Say what?
Audience.
Audience? Well, the product is actually, it's pretty straightforward. In my mind, Twitter, it's a product where it's a messaging product, right? That has some constraint to it, but it's pretty much connecting people at scale using messages, right? What is Amazon's product, or what was Amazon's product when they started, when they were selling books? What was the product of Amazon? Logistics. Yeah.
They were selling books, yo.
Yeah. So you could say, I mean, the product was the books, right? At the beginning, the product was the book. Now, what is Amazon's product today?
The search engine.
Search engine? Yeah, it could be that. Let's switch examples. What is Uber's product?
Transportation.
Yeah, it's transportation, right? What is Airbnb product? What do they sell?
Accommodation.
Yeah, hospitality. All right, but in all those examples, if you're thinking about what you're actually going to build, is Uber actually building transportations? Like, are they building cars or anything like that? Is Airbnb actually building hotels? Right? No, they're not. And so I would go back to my example where Nucamp, fundamentally, our product are coding bootcamps. Until you actually step back and you also realize that the product is how we are delivering those coding bootcamps. Because to do that, just like Amazon had to build a platform, or Uber has to build a platform, or in some extent Twitter has to build a platform, and Airbnb, the product, and I'm speaking more in terms of engineering, is also the platform that you're going to build to deliver that end product to your customer. And you're always going to have, especially if you're building something that looks like a marketplace. And I would say most businesses today kind of look like a marketplace, right? Twitter is connecting people onto that platform and they exchange messages. Airbnb is connecting a host with a guest and they contract together. A ton of new ideas or new products or hacks are actually building marketplace and connecting people and creating value out of that. And so you're going to have to think dually in terms of the product that your customer is going to buy. And in our case, it's going to be a coding bootcamp, and how you're going to deliver that to them. And in our case, it's actually doing that at scale in 180 cities, recruiting instructors on one hand, recruiting workshop location on another hand, and then bringing the audience to that, the students. And that actually right now is a huge engineering effort. So that's another thing that you're going to want to think about, and how you're going to, address that duality. And we'll talk about how you actually do that. But let me pause. Any one of you right now are exactly going through that of really having to deal with an actual product that the customer is going to buy or use, and then the platform that you need to build to actually deliver it. And you want to share a little bit about that. Anyone? No? You guys are shy. Are you afraid that someone is going to steal your IP? Hey, Dan, go ahead. Go for it.
Can you repeat the question one more time, please?
Who right now he's in the process of building something that has those two elements. You have the product that your customers are going to use or buy. Like think of, the product is a taxi cab, or it's a book on Amazon, or it's a room or a house on Airbnb. So you have to think about that, but you also have to think about the platform that's going to be used to deliver that. No one? Dan, does that work for you?
I don't know if that's specific, but I was working on a project that dealt with wine inventory, keeping track of wines, and consumers are usually large restaurants or wine experts that have giant cellars where they can't find the wine. So they need a program to tell them, hey, go to A6 and get your wine there.
That's perfect. So that's typically a marketplace type of thing where you're going to have people who provide the wine to you, and you're going to then ship that wine and create value on top of it to help restaurants, right? So your product is the wine. And so you're going to have to think about, okay, where can I procure myself good wine? But then you're going to have to think about the platform and how actually that platform is going to scale, it's going to cost not too much, how you're going to operate shipping and all of that. So you are exactly in that space of, building a marketplace. Your product is the wine, but really also your product is that platform that you're going to have to build. All right. So the very first thing, once you identify what exactly is your product or your products, is to know how to prioritize what you're going to test first. And this is where most engineers will actually prioritize testing the wrong things. Meaning you actually want to test the product the customer will buy first. So in your case, Dan, you want to make sure that you know exactly how to select your wine and how you're going to bring the best wine for the restaurants based on what they care about. If you were trying to test your platform first, but you didn't spend enough time on actually making sure you have the right wine, well, that will be a great risk. And so if I bring that back to Nucamp, we didn't have the platform that you see right now for the first 18 months. And the platform is www.nucamp.co. What we did actually is we delivered a coding bootcamp for 9 months to 8 students in Tacoma, Washington, to actually validate the model and the actual final product and making sure that that coding bootcamp product was meaningful in the industry. And that coding bootcamp product was, well, it's going to be fully online during the week. It would have a limited number of students, maximum 12, and a dedicated instructor. And then students will meet with their instructors on Saturday mornings from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And it will be extremely affordable. And so when I say affordable, we actually started the first 4 weeks bootcamp, which right now costs $349. The very first test, it was $160 for 4 weeks. And that's my next point. In order to really test it and receive meaningful feedback, you can't make it free at first. I mean, there's you probably would be worried about, putting a price tag on it. And it's easy to make it free because once you make it free, you're going to see a ton of people flocking to you and try to take advantage of it. But I advise you to resist that making it free at first. You want to put a price tag on it. And it doesn't have to be very expensive, right? But what you're really trying to see here is, will people be willing to pay for what you have to offer? And you can't test that if they actually don't pay for it. Now, of course, there are other business models where you're not going to charge the end user, like advertising will come next, and all you care about is get more people to sign up. That's a fair game. Then it's probably free for them. But if it's actually a product that you're going to charge for, your way of testing it has to also include a fee model. Now, you can do a small test for free for 1 week, but the real test will be once you actually put a price tag on it and you get people to react to that and start to buy. My big concern at the time, and especially since Nucamp is a business to consumer business, was nobody knows us. Nobody has trust in what we have to offer. Why will anyone actually give money to something that's a total unknown? And I was actually surprised that people do. Like, our website was a Weebly website, not good looking whatsoever. But because the product really meant something and was meaningful and solved an issue that people actually were experiencing, we actually saw people pay the $160, not say that, 8 people pay $160 to join the very first bootcamp we will deliver in Tacoma, Washington. So that's kind of the main guidance for you here is, don't be confused when it's time to test what you want to build. Don't try to test the platform and how you're going to deliver the product. Test the product itself. And if your business model requires that at some point you're going to charge your customers for it, then actually test with that charge. Not too expensive, but not free. Any question on that? Anyone actually can relate to that at this time? No? All right, let's move on to the next one then. Okay, so 9 months later, we had our first graduation party in Tacoma. And actually a month before that, that's really when I started to build what I would call the other product. The platform that will allow us to advertise. That's like a baby. Yes, AG. 9 months later, it's like a baby. Well, let me actually spend some time on that. That's the thing that was kind of painful in our business. Is a bootcamp is a long time, right? A bootcamp is minimum of 5 months, and we had a couple of tests. Hopefully, your business doesn't take that much time to be tested. Hopefully, your product, you could test it maybe in a month. I don't know. Our product, it had to be tested over a long period of time to be finally validated. And so at that point in time, that's really when we switched gears. That's really when, and let me actually pull it now. We started to work on the other product, the platform product. And that platform product for us is our public-facing website. It's nucamp.co. It's how actually we communicate and advertise to our consumer audience that if you live in Fort Collins, Colorado, we have a bootcamp for you, right? And right now, we have presence in 180 US cities. So it is 100% a marketplace with, we recruit instructors locally. We recruit, not right now because of COVID, but local co-working spaces where students can meet with their instructor. And then we have a notion of social connection where students are from Fort Collins. They can meet there. They can hang out together and graduate together and all that. So that's when really we started to build that platform. And this is kind of a version 2 that you're seeing here. And I'll show you the code in a little bit. But here's the thing. Once we validated the coding bootcamp product, it really felt like we were always 5 days behind where we wanted to be. Meaning, suddenly there was a backlog of feature and capabilities that we needed to scale. That felt almost unsurmountable. And so for that, what I would tell you is that's the moment where you will need to be full-time doing this, especially if you're part of the engineering team yourself, if you're coding it yourself. And I coded the website for most of 1 year. So I was kind of the one and only engineer for quite a long time. And be ready really to work on it like 12, 14 hours a day. People say, your hackathon project is going to be the way you learn. that's when I really equate that to my own experience. That hackathon project is this. It's me spending 12 to 14 hours a day building the website so that the business will exist beyond that one city in Washington named Tacoma, and actually start to exist in 180 cities in the US. What's great about that as well is oftentimes you have a hackathon project and you know what you want to build, let's say for the first 2 weeks, and then you look at it and you say, know what am I supposed to do with it? Like you haven't necessarily thought about, what's happening to your project 2 weeks later. If you're really thinking about it as a business that you're going to build and launch, and you have actually tested your product before, you're going to have a laundry list of things that has to be in there and you have to build. And so you're never going to fall short of ideas, features, capabilities, things that actually your project will need. Let me actually name a few to you right now. Things actually were not planned at first and we had to add over the weeks and the month. So the concept of someone can register or someone can be just interested. Like someone can just give us an email and receive emails from us, and someone can actually decide to register. When you register, we have a concept of a coupon code. Like I never thought we wanted to build coupon code until it was obvious we wanted to. We're actually going to have a coupon code for Black Friday. But that feature here just popped up because the business needed it. People were telling us, how are your coding bootcamp viral? Can actually people refer their friends to it? And so we had to build a referral feature. And so everyone who's joining has a referral code and they can get money from it. We have an early bird rate that's different from the full rate. We have scholarships. That's the latest feature we actually added back in June. We didn't have scholarships before that, and we decided that we needed scholarships. And I could go on and on. We have a feature to allow companies to post their jobs that we actually then connect to our grads. But by actually thinking about your hackathon project as a true business, thinking about the business model, thinking about what really is the end product, testing that end product, you're going to have a year-long worth of features and capabilities that are going to really allow you to further enrich your project, aka your business. Any question? Dan. So is your product a website or is it the ancestors' time? Do people use the website often after they sign up? How do you, mostly Slack, how do you manage both person and the team? Wow, so it's a great question. The very first thing we had to validate in our model was, to your point around instructors. I was the very first instructor and people loved it because, of my background, coming from Microsoft. And the big question is, can you replicate that? Like, if I'm not the instructor, what's happening then? And the answer is, it's happening really well because there's a ton of people out there that are as passionate as myself, as skilled and actually better skilled than myself. And actually also able to provide, empathy and care to students. And so right now, we ask students to grade instructors on from a rate, sorry, not grade, but rate, on a scale from 0 to 5. And our average is 4.6 something. So great feedback. But then to your point, if that didn't work, if we could not recruit instructors that will deliver that level of satisfaction, we probably will not have a coding bootcamp right now. Now, the bootcamp itself, it's a combination, and I'll talk about that. Oftentimes, especially in our business, our product is a combination of different platforms. So we have a learning management platform that I'll show it to you. We have a marketing nurturing platform. We're doing digital marketing, and I'll show it to you as well. We use Slack as well. So it's bits and pieces that we assemble all together. Not everything is custom developed or in-house developed. Some is just assembling things together. And how do I manage a website and a team? That's when at some point, and actually very early, you want to find a partner. So most people like me start a lonely journey, I would say. You have an idea, you're validating it, you're quitting your job or else, and at some point, you really find yourself very lonely because you want to exchange. And I was looking for another perspective. I really felt like at some point, everything was too much in my mind and what I was thinking, and I wasn't challenged enough in, what else? What could be possible or different? And very quickly, you actually want to bring someone along that's going to be your partner. And I found someone who actually will bring the operational excellence, the team building excellence that will actually allow me to focus on the products themselves. And so that's the other point where at the time where you have to really spend a huge amount of energy in building, you want to be able to actually not build just the product, but build the team around you. And you can't do it alone. It's not possible. You really cannot do it alone, right? I mean, I just mentioned I was like 12, 14 hours just coding. So think about that and think about it early if possible, right? Who's in your network? Who do you know that you can, have chats once in a while at first? The person who actually you think could join you later on, and you're going to kind of progressively bring them onto the journey. And then, of course, you may actually need investments. We were lucky enough in our business that students were willing to register early. So we had kind of had a cash flow that was positive. And so we haven't needed that much upfront investment. Other businesses, other industries are cash flow heavy. Like if you're in the hardware space, if you're in the pharmaceutical space, you have to have a huge amount of capital upfront before you actually can ship a product. So you're going to have to, have experiences in being able to raise money to help you with that. Any question on that? Building. Who's right now very deep, like coding 6, 12, 14 hours a day? Raise your hand. Maybe speak out. Yeah, AG? Yeah, Dan? Okay, you're all coding right now? All right. Cool. How is it going for you guys? Exciting?
I literally have 20 tabs open, like 3 terminals and my text editor, like right now.
Cool. That's brilliant. Brilliant. Congratulations. All right. Yeah, I mean, for me, that's one of the things that I enjoyed the most. It's being able to go very, very deep. I watched the Social Network movie recently again, and there's a sentence that Mark Zuckerberg's actor says, describing someone who's coding, saying, "You can't bother that person, he's wired." And so that feeling of being wired to the system and just producing value every day, I mean, you have to enjoy that, and it's truly enjoyable. So anyway, what I realized while doing that, and especially if you're thinking of a business to consumer business, right? If you're building a B2C company, you're going to have to expand your knowledge way beyond coding. And as the engineer and the product owner, you're going to have to really familiarize yourself to ways that your company is going to market and sell the product, because those ways are going to become features and capabilities of your product itself. So back in the days, brick and mortar, right? You will build your product, and then salespeople will sell your product, and then marketing people will market your product. Nowadays, everything is integrated together. So the way you build your product also has ways that you're marketing your product or selling your product. And it started years ago with the concept of, freemiums. Like, how many of you have signed up for 14 days test of a product before actually giving it, a monthly fee? Like, how many of you are right now actually in a trial of a website? Yeah. So that freemium model, right, is exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not saying you have to have a freemium model, but I'm saying that capability is deeply embedded into the product itself. Because once you're actually signing up to a freemium, guess what? There's a connection to the marketing automation software, and maybe you've been assigned an AI or a seller that's going to send you email saying, hey, can I help? Schedule time with me, right? That's actually part of the product. That's a capability to connect those dots. Then the product is going to be able to identify, actually, are you actively using the software or not? Yes, you signed up, but are you actually using it? And based on that, it's going to make decisions in terms of, okay, do we actually call you or not? If you visited the product or the website, but you haven't signed up yet, you've actually maybe added your first name, last name, but you didn't press the button. Guess what? There's a pixel on that website. That's going to tell Facebook and Google, show as many ads to that person as you can until they press the sign up button. So being familiar with, the main two B2C engines that are actually B2B as well, Facebook ads, Google ads, how they use the pixel, how to track events in your app, is critical. That's absolutely critical. I spend half of my time right now tweaking how our website reacts to pixel events. Add to cart, interested, landing on the web page and interacted with the web page, which is different from landing pages in Facebook Talk. It's different from page views. It's actually kind of an active page viewer, right? So all of that, you're going to have to become very familiar with it, because that's going to be the core of how you're going to be able to make money. SEO is another thing, right? You're going to build a website, and if you're like me, I built the website using Angular at first, and it's still Angular actually. At some point, you're going to realize that Google actually has a real hard time indexing your website, and your website doesn't appear on Google search engine, and it's going to be a little bit of a OS moment, and you're going to have to want to figure out how Google is going to finally be able to index your website in a way that makes sense. So you're going to have to really internalize all of those techniques. And I'm seeing, yeah, copy.ai. Yeah, okay, all the feedback on the AI, on the trial things. Okay, perfect. Thanks, everyone. Any question on that? Are any of you right now becoming familiar with Facebook ads, Google ads? Anyone actually in the middle of, integrating those tools into your project? You want to say something? Yeah? No? All right. Then you have a question around, don't you just have to drop a Google link on your website in order to get indexed? So let me show you what the problem actually is. Let's go into some code here. So that website right now, if Google opens it, they're going to see that page. And that page, because it's an Angular, but it will look the same for React. All it does really, it's pointing to JavaScript files. Those JavaScript files are opened by your browser and processed by your browser to create the HTML content. So all those JavaScripts here, if I now do a inspect, you're going to see that the resulting content in the document object model, the DOM, is completely different. Right? I have an app here, I have router, I have all my content here. It's going to take a huge amount of time for Google to process that JavaScript. and then fetch the HTML result from that JavaScript and index it. Especially since you're first building the website, Google won't have any knowledge of you and your website, and actually is not going to give you and your website enough time capital. So Google decides how much time they're going to really waste in terms of processing cycles on your website, trying to index it. If it's a website that's been around for a long time, where they say, okay, there's a ton of inbound links, so it's a really important website, they're going to say, okay, we're going to spend a good amount of time trying to index that website because it's worth it. If it's a new website and you don't have any inbound links, they're going to be, that one can wait. And so your website cannot appear for like a month because Google has decided, I'm not going to spend the resources to unpack the JavaScript, run the JavaScript, extract the HTML, blah, blah, blah. And so what you need to do is pre-rendering. So now let me show you something that's pretty fun. I think it only works with Chrome for me. So if I go to the same website now, okay, so let me show you again. If I do a view source, same code, right? There's like nothing and a bunch of JavaScript files. But now if I tell the website that I'm actually Googlebot, so I'm actually Google Spider trying to index it, and I refresh the page, okay, not this one. Let's do it again. Let's do scholarships or New York City. Come on. Work it. There we go. So that's what Google sees actually. Google sees a weird page with completely different content that has already been processed for it. So Google now doesn't need to unpack the JavaScript. It's already unpacked. And all it has to do is just look for, the text in there and index that. So that's one trick. All right, let's go back to this. Any question on that? So Google Ads, you haven't studied. Okay, great. What extension is that out of curiosity? That extension, I think you were asking about the one I had on Chrome. It's a user agent type of extension. So it's changing what type of user agent you send to the website. And so that's, what's the name of that one? User agent switcher. All right. So let's do a demo. Who wants to see my code? All right. So this is what it looks like. I think I started to build that like 2 years ago now. So it's been 2 years. So it started as Angular 5 Ionic 3. If any one of you know what it's about. You probably all know Angular. Ionic was very popular like 3 years ago. It's not that much anymore. We did a migration of the full code to Angular 10 Ionic 5 like 2 months ago. It sits on top of Firebase. Anyone is familiar with Firebase here? Who knows Firebase? Yeah. So it's a Firestore database. It's we're using Cloud Functions, and it's hosting using Angular. So that's Angular 10. We have our functions here. One thing that we've been doing was, and we're using Express on top of Cloud Functions. Never trust the client. There's a concept here that says especially on a website, your website can be compromised by malicious individuals or code or people, and so for example, when someone signs up with a credit card, you never want to take for granted what the person on the website says. So you want to do all the checks back in the back end. So the registration transaction really happens on the back end, not on the front end. We are integrating with Stripe. So Stripe is a financial transaction provider. I love Stripe. There's a fee, obviously, but it's really the service right now that offers the most flexibility. Got the leader in the space, so I will recommend Stripe any day. We are, so this is what it looks like. We use a ton of components. So what I mean by component, that's going to be, you're going to recognize those. So like, so this is a component right here. This is our career services component where we're showing two, two charts here. That same component is called on this page, but this time with 4 charts. So we're doing a heavy usage of components. You have them all here. What we've been doing as well is, because obviously operating a coding bootcamp has huge implications in terms of managing instructors, assigning instructors, managing student registrations. We actually have blended the user-facing website with our operations team's website. So let me actually show you something really cool. We can look at our weekly feedback right here. Takes a little bit of a while, but you can see right now that, that rating here is our instructor rating for that period of time, from November 2nd to November 9th. So that past week, across all courses we've delivered, all 70 courses, 700 students, average rating for our instructors is 4.78, which is awesome. Like when I see that, I love it. And you can drill down. You have all the feedback from students here that you can pull and you can filter on it. And that's our average course content feedback. So again, our fantastic feedback here, 4.49 is a great score out of 5. And then we can do a ton of things. So we can open the cohort, see who's in there, look at the weekly completion, what's the feedback from students. So we've really brought together our customer-facing platform with our back-end operations platform. And we had to do that because all the data is shared, obviously, as you can imagine. I can show you another cool things. If you're an instructor with us, you're going to go to your instructor dashboard. And every 5 weeks, we're going to say, hey, what's your availabilities? And so instructors are going to say, okay, I'm comfortable teaching Bootstrap, HTML. I am not really a backend guy, so not Node. And I kind of like teaching in person. I'm not really good online. And I'm okay being a backup teacher if needed, if you need me. And I'm going to be available those Saturdays here, which means, oh, okay, I'm going to be available to teach Bootstrap and HTML. You can schedule me for that. And so our scheduling team now knows, okay, that person can teach Bootstrap or HTML at those dates and can be a backup on January 9th if needed. So we had to wrestle, or I had to wrestle a lot in terms of knowledge to be acquired and gained. I would say that 2 concepts were the hardest for me. The concept of reactiveness. So we are using the library RxJS. Anyone is familiar with RxJS? Yeah, no, not so much. Well, that's what makes the whole thing responsive, if you want. It's very similar to how you will think about, in React, how you will handle state and reactive states for React, right? And so that was a very challenging concept because, everything is dynamic in your app. Like it's not linear. Like any new event being thrown in your app can impact any component at any point in time. And that's a pattern that's pretty tough to get into. The second complexity was actually on the back end, the concept of promises, JavaScript promises. Who has actually dealt with JavaScript promises already? Raise your hand. Yeah. So that one is tough because until you really understand when the system is handling promises, I mean, my backend was leaking all the time. Like I will not, wait for the promise to end. And then if you don't wait for the promise to end, the script is going to continue to execute and you'll be at the bottom of it when you thought that the top would have been executed already and it wasn't. And so really understanding what it means to wait for promises to end, but also the power of promises, which, you can execute a ton of things at once. The power of manipulating arrays and promise all and waiting for all of that to happen and then doing something else. That was very powerful. Something also that I've been very sensitive to has been performances. And it's very easy actually to create an app, especially if you do React or Angular, that will take forever to load on the first load. And that will be a big no-no. So understanding lazy loading is critical, right? Lazy loading means I'm only going to load those routes at first, but not everything, because I really want the first hit on your page, on my page, to be a very fast one. We went, just by looking after that, we went from a 70% bounce rate to a 50% bounce rate, knowing that most of our traffic comes from advertising. So we're not so well on SEO right now. I mean, we're doing okay, but a ton of our traffic comes from advertising. So a high bounce rate is expected, but 70% was really hurtful, really hurtful. And most of it was because, I would say 60% of our audience on ads are on their cell phone. And if something loads less than 3 seconds on your cell phone, you've lost that person, right? So you really have to pay attention to that. What would you like to see? I mean, there's so many things that I could show you. What should I show you? You want to tell me on your chat what you would like to see in the code in particular, if anything. No? Oh, come on. You're not curious that much? Show me the code where you have your Stripe key. No? I would not have shown that, but anyway. All right. Model controller for data fetching. Yeah, so my services are here. And so anytime I need data, it's going to be through the services. And so I'm going to have a get next bootcamp delivery. So that's a great point. So none of my pages or components are accessing directly the backend database, right? All of that is done through my services layer. And so I have admin layer. I also have user access, kind of custom built. So I allow some functions in my backend to be accessed if you're just a visitor. But some admin functions, you won't be able to access it because you don't have the right keys. So I've built that into the backend model view as well. There is one that's super important, is the user one. So it's really fetching when someone logs and kind of setting all the context of the user. That's what I meant, by the way, by handling your own integration to Google Ads and Facebook Ads. Part of that actually is building our own Nucamp analytics service, which really is our layer, that's our data layer, to push, if that rings any bell, events to the data layer. And that's actually, data layer is Google Tag Manager, another great tools to use. So we send events to, let me actually show you that real quick. Who knows Google Tag Manager? Who knows about that and is using it? No one? Okay. I really recommend anyone to look into that tool. That's our middleware, I would say, to managing all the different pixels and events for Google Ads, for Facebook Ads, for Snapchat, for LinkedIn. And what we do is we send events to that middleware, and then they dispatch those events to all the pixels that we want to use. Okay, so you have our page views here, our lead capture. We do some session recording, like live. That one doesn't work so well, so we've dropped it for now. And all that. So look into that. Look into Google Tag Manager. I have 3 minutes left, so I'm going to answer your questions. Mohammed is asking, what is the most useful design pattern for your project? So the way we handle communities, so as I said, we're serving 180 cities. This community page here, community/co/Fort Collins, is actually one page. Let me show it to you. So it's a fully data-driven page, and it's here. And so that page takes a state and the name. Actually, I should show it here. Well, it's kind of, that's an old code from the V3 of Ionic, but the state and the name in the URL pretty much defines the route. If you're familiar with Angular, you'll see that it's just one route, and that will be here. There you go. So community/state name is one route. And so how we've actually handled that was pretty helpful and smart. But at the same time, we went the opposite approach, was in managing all the individuals' boot camps. So these boot camps starting on December 7th in Fort Collins, although that's one page, obviously, in the database model, it's one entry, it's one record, right? So we can actually decide that particular instance of a bootcamp, we can actually decide that it's not going to start on December 7th, it's going to start on December 9th, and it's going to be the only one changed, right? So here, really, the database drives everything. Do you have integration testing going? So not yet, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to move to Angular 10. It's because of we have access to that much more testing capabilities. But yeah, that's something that we absolutely need to get into our set of capabilities. Let me see. I think I cleared my deck. I guess not, but that's okay. I'll send it along. Any additional question? I'll just leave on that last slide. I built 95% of it alone, but I have a UX designer and a front-end engineer now on the staff. I don't know how many lines of code that is. It's a lot. It's a ton, actually. Yeah. As I said, 12, 14 hours a day. Cool. Well, hit me on email if you want, LinkedIn as well. If you're a student of ours, I'm on Slack if you want. My email is ludo@nucamp.co. And you can find me on LinkedIn easily. All right. Thank you, everyone. Jennifer, back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ludo. That was an amazing talk. I'm sure I'm not the only one who really loved first of all, your deck, and also letting us look under the hood. So thank you so much.